The Galactic Council chamber stretched impossibly wide, its crystalline walls refracting the light of 1,000 distant stars. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the tiered seating-scaled Vrexians with their glowing eye slits, the ethereal luminari floating in containment fields, massive thorac delegates whose rocky carapaces scraped against their seats. The air thrummed with tension and the soft whisper of translation devices. Today's trial would determine the fate of an entire species, though most believed the outcome was already decided. General Krekstar of the Hegemony stood in the center of the chamber, his four arms crossed in contempt. Battle scars ran across his chitinous exoskeleton, and his mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Behind him, holographic displays showed fleet movements and casualty reports from what he called the Earth Campaign. The Council had summoned him to explain why an entire invasion force had vanished into the Outer Rim. But Krekstar felt only pride. He had succeeded where others had failed. He had broken the spirit of yet another primitive world. At the edge of the chamber, a lone figure rose from the diplomatic section. Human, by all appearances bipedal, pale-skinned, unremarkable except for the calm steel in her dark eyes. She wore simple grey robes that seemed almost ceremonial, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the vast space without amplification. "You invaded Earth." The question hung in the air like a blade, sharp and precise. The chamber fell silent. Council members exchanged glances. No one had received reports of any invasion of the human homeworld. General Krekstar's mandibles spread in what his species considered a smile. The primitive world was catalogued for resource extraction. Standard protocol. "We arrived with 3 battle fleets over 800 vessels. Their defenses were ... negligible." He gestured to the holographic displays, showing Earth from orbit. Blue oceans, white clouds, continents green with life. A garden world, populated by bipedal mammals. No orbital platforms, no energy shields. Their most advanced weapons appeared to be crude chemical rockets. The human representative remained standing, her expression unreadable. Around the chamber, delegates began to murmur. The Counselor Prime, an ancient Etherian whose form shifted between states of matter, projected its voice directly into their minds. "General Krekstar, our records show the human species made first contact only 2 solar cycles ago. They were granted preliminary membership status pending evaluation. How do you justify military action against a recognized entity?" Krekstar's laugh was like breaking glass. "Recognized? These creatures barely qualify as sentient. When our advanced scouts landed in their major population centers, we expected immediate surrender. Instead, ... Double quotes, his expression darkened. Instead, they opened fire. Farmers with projectile weapons shot down our reconnaissance drones. Military installations that should have fallen within hours became fortress complexes. Children, their own offspring, carried weapons and supplies through burning cities." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The Vrexian delegate rose, his scales shifting to deep red, a sign of distress in his species. "You engaged civilian populations. This violates 17 interstellar accords." But the human representative remained still, watching Krekstar with those steady eyes. "Continue," she said simply. Krekstar's 4 arms gestured to new holographic displays in jungles, urban ruins, mountain ranges. "We deployed standard occupation forces, orbital bombardment of key infrastructure, ground forces to secure population centers. But these ... humans, they refused to follow standard behavioral patterns. In the Amazon basin, our supply convoys vanished into the jungle. Local resistance fighters using primitive chemical explosives and captured energy weapons destroyed 3 armored divisions. New images flowed across the displays. A Kansas wheat field where a single human with a hunting rifle had taken down a Hegemony gunship. Brazilian guerrillas melting out of the rainforest to strike supply lines before vanishing again. African tribal militias working alongside European resistance cells, sharing intelligence and resources. The coordination was impossible. These people had no unified government, no central command structure. In North Africa, Krekstar continued, his voice growing tight with remembered frustration. Nomadic tribes used sandstorms as cover to attack our forward bases. In the northern continents, civilian populations disappeared into underground tunnel systems that our sensors couldn't map. Every city we took became a battleground. Every victory came at costs we hadn't anticipated. The Thorok representative, a massive being whose voice rumbled like distant thunder, spoke for the first time. You faced organized military resistance. This suggests prior galactic contact perhaps, weapons trafficking from rogue elements. The human representative finally moved, taking 3 steps closer to the center of the chamber. We had no prior galactic contact beyond the diplomatic mission that granted us preliminary status. We had no energy weapons, no shield technology, no faster-than-light communication. Her voice remained calm, but something in it made even the largest delegates shift uncomfortably. What we had was something your forces clearly didn't expect. What? Krextar snarled. What could possibly have? Time. The human's interruption cut through his words like a blade. You gave us time to prepare, time to adapt, time to learn. While your fleet positioned itself for orbital bombardment, our engineers were studying the wreckage of your scout ships. While your forces secured what you thought were key objectives, our people were downloading data from your communication networks. The chamber fell completely silent. Krextar's eyes widened. Impossible. Our encryption was child's play to a species that had been breaking codes and hacking systems for centuries. The human representative gestured, and new holograms appeared, human engineers working by candlelight in bombed-out basements, taking apart hegemony plasma rifles and rebuilding them into crude but effective cannon. Teenagers with laptops sitting in the ruins of cities, their screens showing hegemony fleet positions and tactical data. You thought us primitive because we hadn't reached the stars yet. You forgot that intelligence and determination aren't limited to spacefaring species. Krextar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe agitation. Even so, 800 ships became 800 targets. The human's voice carried new weight now, and the chamber leaned forward to catch her words. Your ships were designed for conventional warfare, fleet against fleet, with established rules of engagement. They weren't designed to face an enemy that turned every weakness into a weapon. When mothers carry explosives through fire-bombed streets to reach your supply depots, when children redirect your own drones against your forces using game controllers, when every farmer with a rifle becomes a sniper and every city becomes a fortress, you're not fighting an army anymore. You're fighting a planet. New images cascaded across the display's orbital battles, showing human vessels that looked more like flying junkyards than warships, cobbled together from steel and salvaged alien technology, making suicidal runs against hegemony capital ships. The impossible mathematics of it began to sink into the Council's collective consciousness. These humans had reverse-engineered alien technology while under siege, built a space fleet from scrap metal and determination, and somehow won. The Councilor Prime's mental voice carried new undertones of concern. General Krextar, please provide a complete report on the campaign's conclusion. For the first time since taking the stand, Krextar's arrogance cracked. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. We were forced to withdraw. 3 months into the occupation, they launched a coordinated assault on our orbital fleet. Impossible vessels held together with what appeared to be chemical welding and primitive alloys. They shouldn't have been able to reach orbit, much less engage in combat, but they did. The human representative wasn't asking. They did. Krextar's admission echoed in the vast chamber. And they won. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat. We lost 60% of our forces. The remainder barely escaped. The chamber erupted. Delegates from dozens of species shouted questions, demands for clarification, expressions of disbelief. Through it all, the human representative stood motionless, waiting. When the Councilor Prime finally restored order, she spoke again. The Council granted humanity preliminary membership based on our diplomatic first contact mission. You invaded our world without provocation, without declaration, in violation of interstellar law. Her words cut through the noise like a laser. We defended ourselves. We adapted. We survived. And now you stand here, asking this council what to do about the humans. She turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. Let me save you some time. We are not the frightened primitives you expected. We are not the compliant subjects you planned to harvest. We are something your species seems to have forgotten existed. We are what happens when intelligence meets absolute determination. You should not be asking what to do about humanity. You should be asking whether you want us as allies or enemies. Several delegates began speaking at once, but the Thorac representative's thunderous voice cut through them all. This is unprecedented. A pre-spaceflight civilization defeating a hegemony battle fleet. Not pre-spaceflight anymore, the human said quietly. Thank you for the technology transfer. Our orbital shipyards are quite impressive now. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. If humanity had captured and reverse-engineered hegemony technology, if they'd built orbital infrastructure in the aftermath of the invasion, if they'd proven capable of unified planetary resistance against overwhelming odds, the Vrexian delegate scales had shifted to deep purple color, indicating existential fear. Category red, he whispered, unconquerable. The question before this council, the human representative continued, is not whether to punish General Krekstar for his failed invasion. The question is whether you want humanity as a member of this galactic community, or whether you prefer us to remain ... independent. The word carried implications that sent ripples of unease through the assembly. An independent humanity, armed with stolen technology and proven impossible to conquer, represented a variable that could destabilize the entire galactic order. The Etherian Counselor Prime's mental voice carried new harmonics: respect, wariness, and something approaching fear. The chair recognizes the human representative for final statement. She stood in the center of the vast chamber, a single figure surrounded by hundreds of alien eyes. We did not ask for war. We were peaceful farmers and engineers and teachers when your fleets arrived. But when war came to us, we met it with everything we had. We turned plowshares into swords, and we turned your own weapons against you. Her voice grew stronger, carrying to every corner of the chamber. Some of you are wondering if you should quarantine our system, limit our expansion, contain the threat we represent. Others are calculating the advantages of alliance. All of you are trying to decide if we're dangerous. The pause stretched for long seconds before she delivered her final words. We are dangerous, but only to those who mistake our desire for peace as weakness. Today, you learned that humanity will not be conquered. Tomorrow, you decide whether we'll be your allies, or whether you'll learn what it means to have humanity as your enemy. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, from the Vrexian section, came the sound of two clawed hands striking together. Applause. It spread, tentatively at first, then with growing conviction, across species lines that had never been crossed before. Not all joined. In some delegates sat frozen with implications they were only beginning to understand. But as the human representative walked calmly toward the chamber's exit, every being present understood that the balance of galactic power had fundamentally shifted. Earth had been invaded, Earth had won, and now Earth was no longer humanity's prison. It was their launching point.